I'm Anastasia, Senior Community Manager at Total War here at Creative Assembly. Today we are continuing celebrating 25 years of Total War, and today we're talking about one of the most beloved titles out there that is almost 2 decades old, Medieval 2. Today I am joined by amazing guests, Pav, Greg and Mike. Pav, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Pavel and I'm a game director on the Total War team.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the art team director on Total War.
Hi, I'm Mike, and back at the time when we did Med 2, I was the development director on Total War.
Awesome. Well, let's then get into the very first question. So this was the first game in the franchise to get a sequel. Why is that?
It's an interesting question. I mean, we'd already done Medieval once with Med 1, and we'd just finished Rome, and at the time we had a kind of philosophy of doing revolution-evolution cycles, right? So after finishing Rome 1, we kicked off a revolutionary cycle which was working towards empire, but at the same time we wanted an evolution, something that really exploited the Rome engine and tidied up all its unpleasant bits and made good use of it. And that meant we needed some suitable setting for that. And when we're looking for settings for the games, we look for something which is cool from a historical and from a culture point of view. We look for something where there's rapid technological change, and something where there are a lot of different factions. Any of them could have won. I mean, those are the kind of requirements for a Total War game. And Medieval period ticked all of those boxes really well, and it was also something that we knew really well. Because we'd already done it once, so it made sense for that to be an evolutional kind of sequel game rather than something completely new.
The medieval period seems to be a fan favorite, not only amongst the video game communities, but also from the historical standpoint. Why do you think it is?
I think it's just, for me personally, it's just really relatable, particularly because a medieval setting feels far more kind of present, especially for me growing up in Europe. I'm from Krakow, which is a medieval city. It's there are remnants of the medieval everywhere, castles and it's ever present. So for me, it just feels like a very powerful kind of point in history, and a very powerful setting that's not so ancient that it's out of reach. It's kind of feels almost kind of ever present, but still far enough to be able to. You can
almost touch it.
Yeah, you can almost touch it, but far enough so you can suspend your disbelief and just kind of really escape to it.
I think back then, Kingdom of Heaven had just come out, and I think that re-engaged our enthusiasm for it, and there was a wave of kind of medieval stuff going through Hollywood at the time.
Yeah,
so I think we just wanted to catch that wave and ride it.
Yeah, I was going to say what Pav's mentioned, because a lot of us has grew up with medieval building stuff. So I was living near Warwick, so you got this big, massive, looming castle always in kind of present. So it's just like always in like in our DNA, kind of living in a medieval place, and also the buildings. I remember going back to Medieval 1 in the sense that we took inspiration from the buildings from there, doing all kind of like warped kind of like beams and things. Wasn't necessarily historically accurate because you wouldn't build buildings like that, but that's what was our interpretations, what medieval buildings should look like. So it's just always, taking inspiration of your kind of, surroundings. And that's what's so great living in Europe and things, because we've got all this kind of medieval stuff.
From the context of your discipline, what do you find was the most challenging and maybe most rewarding while working on Medieval 2?
So for me, when I started on Medieval 2, it was my first game. I literally joined CA that year, so it was my first industry job. So everything was rewarding, immensely rewarding, and equally challenging because I was learning. I was learning how to make games, and I was an artist. I was specifically working on the movies with Greg. We were working on the assassination movies, the event movies, all the cinematics that were in the game, and yeah, it was all new to me. So it was an amazing experience. That like I say, equally challenging and rewarding.
I think for me, it was just the mocap shoots. So they would fly in. The Australian team would come in. And we would literally, in those old days, we had the old mocap system, and so we didn't have our own mocap studio. So we'd have all the mocap cameras in a kind of a cupboard somewhere, and so it's literally the animators get hired in a van and just putting all these kind of cameras and things in this van and hiring a school hall, a whole mocap set up in a week, and we had to do the medieval to mocap sequences, and was pushing it as well because we were trying to do more match mocap stuff there with this old kind of system. So the data was really, really ropey. But I had a whole week working with 2 actors, and then we also so it took a day to set all the things up. And then you have the day of each day you have to take the cameras down because they're really expensive kind of equipment. So you can't leave 20 grand cameras each in the school hall. School hall. And so we had to take that. So it was a really arduous, process. So we had to do all the mocap there. And then we had to do the assassination movies, which we worked with you. But then we didn't have any actors for that. So I think it was me. I think I put on working with Nick T. I had to put the mocap suit of the previous stunt coordinator. So it was all kind of sweaty. So I had to put all this kind of sweaty mocap studio, and I literally had an hour to do all these kind of Nick T directing these assassination movies.
I remember messaging saying, "Oh, Greg, we need some run. We need you to stick your head out of a barrel and shoot a poison dart out or something." Just these really obscure kind of animations that we were missing because we were trying to recreate all of these mad assassinations. Very much inspired by the first Shogun, but yeah, just trying to figure different ways to kind of play those out. And yeah, just random animation requests. Yeah. You're like, okay, yeah, we'll have to get back in a suit for that one. Weren't we bound to school holidays as well?
Yeah.
So we couldn't really mocap until the school was out, so we can occupy the hall. And yeah, it was the same for Empire.
Yeah, exactly. It was literally. You're right. I forgot all about that. So we just had to kind of go. We can't do it now. Then it's half term, and then it was literally get the kind of mocap van and just literally block book it.
So there was that additional level of challenge that you also had to fit all of that into school holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other the challenge from a dev point of view was working with a team in Australia on the other side of the world, and it was a new team. We were building the team while we were doing it, and although the core of that team had worked on Rome 1 on the core engine in the studio with us in Horsham, transplanting them back out, taking out some people to be the seed for that new team, and then getting them all up and running, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, because I remember we had one animator as well, Andrew Bedford, who was on part of our team. We worked with Spartan Total War. That's when was all the animation team. And then once that project was finished, we just literally went on to help out Medieval 2. So he went on into Medieval 2. So we had that kind of the learnings that we learned from Spartan Total Warrior. That was where we started doing the matched animations. And we were starting to understand about readability of animations, because if you look at Rome and stuff, it was just literally what we learned from the sports days was just literally just mocap it, do a few tweaks there. But we learned from the process of Spartan Total Warrior taken into kind of Medieval 2 is to kind of have that more readability. So we started having the match combat, making it a bit more theatrical. And I think some of the animations we have got running in and charging up and leaping in the air just to break that silhouette. Rather where kind of the Rome, if I remember correctly, probably misremembering now, but I think the Rome total animations were just literally fairly static on the ground. They weren't jumping up as much.
A bit more dynamic with Med. Yeah, for sure.
I think you can feel that in the final game. The charges in Med 2 were definitely the best thing we'd done from that point of view so far, and I think probably better than it was in some of the subsequent games as well.
Yeah. Those leaps on charge were definitely really good. I still remember to this day when I first saw the trailer when we put it together, that kind of guy leaping from the infantry was good stuff.
Yeah, we also upgraded the kind of how many bones we put in the skeleton as well, because for Rome we didn't have any shoulder bones, so you just literally had these bones here. But for Medieval 2, we added the shoulder bones, so when you get some actions, you can actually, do these two-handed sword swings, which you couldn't do so much in Rome. So it was kind of upgrading kind of the animation system.
But I think the whole of the battle side did particularly well with Medieval 2, partly because of Bob Smith, the legendary Bob Smith, he was the programmer who wrote the core AI for Shogun and Medieval and Rome. For the battle side, and he was a great designer as well. And he went out to Oz and was the equivalent of the game director for the project. So he brought a particular focus on the battle side to that game, which I think served them very well.
For sure.
I must ask, because you were talking about doing all of that stuff in like in school and sometimes getting yourself into the suits and creating all of the movements. Have you ever looked back at the gameplay and I did that?
For sure. I mean, funnily enough, and I appreciate this is for Med, but for Empire a little bit more so, because for Empire it was myself and Greg in the suit. So we could actually see ourselves on the battlefield. But yeah, for Med 2, absolutely. I think especially the movies. I mean, they're so there'll always be, you know, a special place in my heart for those movies, because again, it was my first gig in the industry, but also because of the kind of thought behind it. A lot of it obviously masterminded by Nick T, but kind of just the direction of, you know, the kind of wacky ways of you know, carrying out those assassinations. And obviously the you know, where is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? You kind of don't know. You're kind of watching, waiting to see.
I was watching it again. It's like delightfully hammy, the whole thing. That's the magic to it, kind of thing. And I was just like, and it's like all the kind of pieces, you know, the animations, the posing, is all exaggerated, really hammy, but it's just kind of delightful. It's just kind of the noise as well, the gasps, because I was watching the other day and it's just literally like this is really loud gasp, one of the women kind of like just pointing at the assassin kind of thing.
In a bush.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of like...
Don't think we get away with that these days.
No. I think the run is definitely me, because it's like when the assassin kills someone, then he just legs it, really runs really fast. And I think it's just me, just right, I want to get this shoot over and done with, kind of thing, kind of just running as fast as possible.
How was historical research done and how it was applied to the games back then?
First joined CA, and I think there was just one machine that was connected to the internet. So if you had to go to the internet, you had to go to that machine.
That's right. Yes, that's why I don't remember using it, because it was that one machine upstairs.
Yeah, and that was Tim thinking that everybody should be working rather than browsing.
Good old Tim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was books, lots of books. Osprey books, but in particular, were really useful. It's a bit easier with medieval content than say the Japanese stuff for Shogun. So I don't think we needed to get a specific historical consultant for that, but that is something that we've done on the other games when we've needed to.
Yeah, and museum and kind of gallery visits as well, kind of trips, research trips like that. But yeah, books, I mean, to be honest, books are still, we have the internet now, but we still have a book budget every project. We get in all the relevant books to do our research, because it's, you know, it's I think it's important, you know, to have that wide range of reference.
I think when it comes to mocap and animation, was kind of like, that's when we're realising they don't want to be too, you know, some aspects are you've got to be authentic, but when it comes to kind of fight sequences, there's a reason why kind of you do fight sequence so it's more kind of readable. And so that's when we're starting to learn, like, well, actually, probably you wouldn't fight like that in a kind of historical setting, but for an audience, it's more kind of cinematic if you did it that way. And so that was kind of a learning when we started to do that, and we kind of applied that as we went from kind of like Empire and Shogun 2, that kind of like, oh, actually, let's just read about this, like entertainment we're trying to do, because you want to see a large battle, you want to see some kind of spectacle.
Yeah, I think that's been a tension throughout the whole series, is that, you know, when it comes to the actual moment-to-moment action on a battlefield, we're forced to be a little bit more Hollywood than reality from that point of view.
That's what, you know.
Because the reality is it takes all day to fight a battle, and you can't have the player sat there for 8 hours waiting for things to happen.
Yeah, exactly. That was always for me the magic of Total War, is that kind of Hollywood representation, you know, that kind of excitement, that kind of bombast, but then mixed with the authenticity and the setting.
It is more fun. It is more fun that way.
Absolutely. But yeah, in terms of you know, research for the movies we were doing, you probably wouldn't be able to tell from the movies that we actually created. But yes, lots of referencing movies and other and cinema in general to, you know, to seek inspiration for the different shots and things like that. Absolutely.
I love the one. There's one that's like very kind of Looney Tunes, where there's like a massive rock above a bridge.
Probably Looney Tunes is probably more of a reference point than actual credible, you know, cinema Hollywood. But yeah, absolutely. Maybe Monty Python.
Yeah, it was just brilliant. It's just like this big rock that just throws down and just squashes this person riding a horse.
This title was part developed with the Creative Assembly's old studio in Australia. How was the process working with them?
I think working with Australia, it was very interesting. It had both advantages and disadvantages. So obviously, completely different time zones. So communication was an issue, but by having the whole of the you know, design and control of the project run from the studio there, I think we got around most of those kind of problems. And then there are advantages as well. Things like you know, the studio there would be able to finish a build at the end of their day, submit it. We'd be able to pick it up here at the beginning of our day and spend the day testing it and looking into it. So a lot of the QA was done here, and from their point of view, they'd get up the next morning, all their bugs would be there. They'd submit some changes, and I know we had night shifts running here as well, from a QA point of view. So some of the bugs would get rechecked while they were working during the day. But it's not easy, right? It's not an easy way of doing development. You need to have good teams at both ends, and I think we were very lucky in that respect.
I think with art was very separated. So when it comes to the animations, like UK cleans the data, then it was then handed over to Australia. Then when it came to the cutscenes, we just did it. That was all in part of the UK, so that was our territory. So that was quite good. That's one way of dealing with communication, because we gave ownership. Yeah. So you own this bit, you own that bit there. So I think I remember sometimes I had to do like calls with they were actually using an actual proper phone. It seems weird these days. You've got to use like sort of Teams.
Yeah, no headset, no internet. Yeah.
So
we only had the one machine with the internet, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so just having this phone early in the mornings, right? Yeah, they're still around. So let's just get on the call and just talk about this issue or whatever.
Yeah, I remember. That was my memory. Not really interacting with the Oz team with the movies, because we were kind of handling that and working on that. One thing I do remember though actually is when I was obviously playing the game and giving feedback, is just finding out who do I give feedback to. Because I remember I was pretty sure I asked you, Mike, or someone, I was giving some feedback about Poland's representation in the game, obviously. And there was something, I don't remember the specifics. I can't remember if it was names or if it was locations or just representation of units or whatever. But I'm pretty sure I remember feeding back or asking, who can I speak to? Who can I give them this specific biased Polish feedback to? That's something I remember. But was it just the animation, cinematics, and QA that we did over in?
I think so.
I think Southwater at the time.
I think so. I think it's pretty much just that. Yeah. So the game was pretty much entirely designed and programmed there.
Medieval 2 was the first game published by Sega. How was it different to being published by Activision?
That's a really, really interesting question. So we'd been working with Activision for a while by then. And suddenly switching to Sega could have been a big upheaval, but in the end it actually wasn't. It was extremely smooth. I think Sega very wisely didn't really want to interfere too much in the studio they just purchased, so I think they were very cautious not to break anything. I think they'd seen other publishers buying up studios and changing their culture and changing their operations and basically destroying them, and didn't want to do the same thing. So we were very much left to make the games that we wanted to make, and for a long time that's how it worked. So long as we kept making good games and games that people like to play, Sega were very, very happy to support us and let us do our own thing. And it was good. It was very good from a developer point of view.
Why, as a philosophy for the franchise, we opted out for authenticity over accuracy, or shall I say full accuracy? It's still pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think it all depends on what you mean, right? And there are degrees. Right? You can try and be extremely accurate, right? But it doesn't really add very much, and you can easily get it wrong as well, right? Because it's only as accurate as the sources you're using. Whereas authenticity really means trying to distill the spirit of that period of that time and present that in a way which feels right. And so I remember having you can have long arguments over what is the exact correct length for a particular spear, and we'll pay some attention to that. But it's better that it actually works and can hit things, and that the unit works as a unit.
Reminds me of like when we put mocap first in for Rome. We got this person, an actor, just like literally breaking things, the actual wooden props. I was so excited, he was really awesome. He put so much energy, he was breaking the stuff, and we just put this raw mocap straight into the game, and it just looked absolutely rubbish. Everyone was just so like, "What? Really? Is this it?" And honestly, he was breaking props and things, but because it's just he's trying to be accurate, whatever. But you have to put some kind of magic, make it a bit more kind of get that kind of excitement.
It's that kind of creative lens, and there's obviously a lot of parallels here between what we do and Hollywood and how things are represented. It's, if you stick to the letter and for example, in the visual arts, if you stick to the accurate scales of everything, everything could just feel a little bit stale, So it's about kind of finding that balance and playing to people's perception and expectation, whilst taking that authenticity into account. So the authenticity allows you to be immersed, suspend your disbelief and believe in the world that's presented to you. But then there's little tweaks just play to those expectations and perceptions. So, tweaking the scale of certain buildings just to exaggerate their dominance in the scene, all this kind of stuff is kind of needed for that to be fun, entertaining, rather than kind of, stale kind of history book, which is, which has its own charm, but it's kind of taking the balance, that kind of balance of Hollywood and accuracy, and
You're trying to make an entertainment product, isn't it?
That's exactly, yeah.
I can remember with some of the combat stuff where there were times we actually flipped a few times between trying to accurately simulate collisions between the ends, the pointy bits of weapons and people's armor and so on, and having a more abstracted, systemic sort of calculation of what the result should be, and then choreographing that out. But I remember problems like when we were doing pikes or long spears, and we had them on hills, and we had people's defense boxes. There would be certain combinations of angle of hill and animations where people suddenly couldn't hit each other at all, because there was no animation that would actually get the spear to intersect with the enemy, there are traps with accuracy.
And there's also the actual reality of just creating something in the time that we have to make it. If we're painstakingly chasing accuracy, it's an endless kind of making sure that everything is exactly as it should be is just not really sustainable as in the times that we normally have to create a game.
I remember doing some match combat sequences, someone throwing a spear, and then because of a certain distance and collisions and whatever, and by the time they got to the person, the victim, the spear is over there, and this person is trying to do this. It's like desynced from the kind of the weapon.
I mean, weapon impact is a good one as well. Yeah. That's again somewhere where we kind of push that kind of it's authentic. Sure, is it accurate? Maybe not. Maybe the mass of the weapon wouldn't send the individual flying as far. But that's where the spectacle comes in. Yeah. That's where that kind of Hollywood license comes in.
Yeah. But with the historical stuff, I mean, we had a general principle where if you could find one reasonably reliable historical reference to a thing, then it was kind of okay to have that in the game, and I think that got us into trouble a few times where we'd find one thing where Pictish crossbowmen, that was one. I'm not sure they were a thing really, but we found one reference which looked like a crossbow.
But those things are super exciting, right? Because some of them, in some cases they were kind of experimental, kind of prototype weapons, but it's there.
Burning pigs and everything.
Yeah, and
they get talked about a lot.
Total War is very much about the what if. What if that thing was successful? What if you as a player choose to progress that tech?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so the tech tree does need to be a little bit open from that point of view. There have to be some things on there which are a bit problematic. Maybe probably shouldn't have worked.
But if you as a player choose to pursue that particular path, great.
You have the tools.
Absolutely.
Rewrite history.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so long as we're reasonably accurate with our starting position, it is then a what if game from that point onwards. So I think there's a lot of it's reasonable to be pursuing authenticity rather than accuracy.
What were the core design philosophies that you wanted to abide by?
Yes, again, that's a very interesting question. So we did have a quite strong design philosophy that ran through all of the early games, right? Which was, some of it was driven by necessity. So it was a kind of a scientific approach where we believed that you could actually do forward design. You could say, okay, if we obey these principles, then a particular thing ought to work. And that was driven partly by the fact we didn't really have time to iterate, and a lot of design these days is done with a lot of iteration, where you'll have a first best guess at something and then refine and refine and refine. In the early days with Total War, most of the iteration had to be between games, not within them. We'd find ourselves running up against our deadline. There wasn't time to go back and redo stuff very much. So there was a lot of almost an engineering approach to a lot of things, right? Particularly with things like feedback and dynamics and so on. So I remember in Med 1, one of the early design problems we had was, in fact, it was a problem all the way through the series, which is when an AI faction starts to get ahead, right, because it's getting stronger and there's natural positive feedback in the game, they would tend to get on a roll and steamroller over the rest of the factions. And we were constantly trying to put things in place to try and restrain that natural positive feedback. The players need to feel that. They need to feel that if they do well, they'll progress. So one of the problems we had with Med 1 was the North African factions would tend to either roll through Spain and up through the whole of Europe, or the European factions would tend to roll through Spain all the way back down. And the way we ended up solving that is by making rebels in Portugal particularly strong. So whichever side kind of went through Spain would get hung up, and you'd end up with this kind of Reconquista thing going on through Spain, which again is, authentic, but definitely not historically accurate. There were particularly strong rebels in Portugal, right? That wasn't a thing. But again, those are the kind of, it's using kind of engineering design principles to apply feedback to keep the game under control. Nowadays we'd probably spend a lot more time actually doing runs and looking at the results and tweaking individual factions to try and control that. Didn't have time back in those days.
Tell me, why do you think Medieval 2 remains one of the most beloved titles in the franchise?
I think it's it's the setting for one. I mean, we've already covered this, right? It's a very powerful, very poignant, very kind of relatable setting. It's not only is that history present among us, especially in Europe, but also knights, knights on horseback, castles. I mean, it's a fantastic concept. And on top of that, it was the at the time the best of Total War is a evolution of Rome, which was a hugely successful game, and it kind of took battles and that core concept and polished it to a point where it was the best of at the time. And then obviously the modability and the longevity of it until now, thanks to the modding community and the fans, has just made it such a everlasting title.
And that's it for today. Big thank you to all of our guests today, and we're going to be back very, very soon with Total War Empire interview. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification. Don't forget to also go to comment section and share your memories and your stories about Total War Medieval 2. See you soon!